So this is the materialistic viewpoint. The third noble truth stands for the viewpoint of action. So the destruction stands for actually taking real action at the present moment, here and now, doing something about whatever it is that needs something done about it. And the fourth one is reality itself, which is a kind of coming together of all the first three. And it's a bit of a radical interpretation, but what's interesting is you can go through Shobo Genzo, and Shobo Genzo does seem to be much easier to understand if you notice that it follows this system of presenting for an argument or a position from four different points of view. First, Dogen will say something from the idealistic standpoint, and then he'll say it from the material standpoint, which often contradicts the first thing he just said. Then he'll synthesize it into action, and finally he'll give a kind of poetic or metaphorical explanation for whatever it is he's been talking about, which is the sort of trying to express reality, and reality is very hard to express in words because words can never kind of contain the real world. So a lot of times when Buddhism is talked about, they talk about it being a spiritual philosophy or spiritual path. And I think that's done mainly because you don't know what other box to put it in. It's obviously not a form of materialism, so it must be a spirituality. But I don't think of Buddhism as spirituality myself. I wouldn't have been interested in it if it was a kind of spirituality, because spirituality, when I was kind of younger, I was interested in spirituality, but then I started to look into it, and it all, when I looked into it, it all seemed to be different kinds of fantasies. And very mental, very cerebral, but it didn't really get at the heart of the problem. And Buddhism is as much concerned with the material side of reality as it is with the so-called spiritual side. So it's not really a kind of spirituality. That's why, we're taking this actual physical position and doing a practice in order to experience Buddhism for ourselves, rather than just thinking about it. In my experience going to churches and things like that, it was all, it all had to do with what you thought about or what you believed. And I couldn't understand why what a person believed had any importance at all to anything. Because even if two people say they believe in whatever it is they believe, what you find is that any two people's interpretation of that thing that they say they believe in are often profoundly different, which is why you have all these terrible schisms within religions. They'll all proclaim they believe in whatever it is, the Holy Trinity or whatever it is, but their interpretation of that is wholly different, completely different. So it's not about belief, but although Buddhism does have certain common beliefs or shared philosophy, which is also kind of interesting. It's the kind of, they talk about the middle way, and it's the middle way between the extremes of materialism and spirituality, as it were. So we're supposed to do this till 11:30, right? So I'm going to stop and open it up to questions. We can have discussion.
Something I've been wondering for a while, Was Buddha a Buddhist?
I don't know. Probably not. Um, I mean, at the time of his the Buddhist order existed. Obviously, he was the leader of the order, and he was the guy that sort of started it all. Um, but I don't know that the word Buddhism or any comparable word existed during his lifetime. His ordination ceremony, for example, the ordination ceremony that you go through to become a Buddhist monk these days is very elaborate, and there's all this stuff involved. And in Buddha's day, supposedly he would just say, "Welcome, monk," and that was it. That was the Buddhist ordination. Um, and a lot of the rules and regulations and things that went along with being a Buddhist were kind of made up on the spot. There are the 10 precepts that you take when you become kind of a Buddhist. And those 10 precepts are based on things that Buddha said during his lifetime. But what would happen is there'd be some kind of a problem within the community of monks, and people would go up to Buddha and say, well, what should we do about this? And he would give an answer, and everybody kind of memorized it. They didn't write stuff down. There's actually, I heard somebody say that maybe Buddha was illiterate, but if he was a prince, I doubt that he, I mean, I think they would have taught princes how to read, but I don't know, because in those days, reading and writing was a very specialized skill, so maybe he was illiterate. But they would memorize these things until they had like hundreds of rules. And as Buddha was dying, the story goes that he told his followers that we should keep the precepts, only the important precepts, and the minor ones didn't matter so much. And then he died, without explaining which ones were the major ones and which ones were the minor ones. Kind of left it all. And what's curious to me is that there's like the 10 precepts. Almost all Buddhist sects revere a set of 10 precepts as being the major ones. And the first 5 are pretty common. It's like don't kill, don't steal, etc., etc. I don't remember them all. But the second 5, I remember getting this email from somebody who was saying, I'm a Buddhist, and I think he was from Hong Kong or somewhere in Asia, not India. Could have been Sri Lanka, but anyway, he said that he tries to keep the 10 precepts. He keeps the first 5 every day, and then tries to keep the second 5 on weekends. And I was like, because the second 5 that I learned are along the same lines of don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat. And I'm like, oh wow, he lies and cheats all week long, and then doesn't on weekends, I guess. But it turned out that when I checked into it, there's another set of precepts in which the second 5 are kind of strange, sort of arbitrary sounding things, like don't sleep on a high and wide bed, don't listen to music. I can't remember what the other ones are, but I remember those 2 in particular stood out. And so there's this kind of school of thought that we can keep the first 5, which are these sort of basic, don't kill, don't steal, all that stuff, and then keep the other 5. But what I assume happened, I don't know. What I assume happened is that maybe this interpretation kind of follows a chronological order of maybe the first 10 things that he actually made a decision about. So that's kind of interesting. So I don't know if he was a Buddhist, probably not.
But he conscientiously started or instituted some sort of religion around what he was teaching, right?
Yeah, I think it was more of a loose group of people, but it became pretty popular during his lifetime, to the point where he was sending his own disciples out to teach his stuff. There were more people who wanted to listen to it than he could actually get to, because they didn't have DVDs and stuff pass around. So it became big enough that it was like that.